Why explaining yourself is always a mistake. There's a moment that separates the powerful from the powerless. It happens when someone questions your actions, challenges your decisions, or demands to know why you did what you did. In that moment, your natural instinct kicks in. You want to explain. You want to justify. You want to make them understand. And in that exact moment, you lose all your power. Every single time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't deserve an explanation, you hand them a piece of your sovereignty. You're essentially saying, your opinion of me is more important than my opinion of myself. You're giving them the authority to judge whether your reasons are good enough. You're making them the ruler of your life. Today, we're going to explore why explanation is the language of the weak, and why the most powerful people in the world almost never justify their actions to others. We're going to understand the psychology behind this principle. Learn when explanations are appropriate and when they're destructive, and master the art of living without needing anyone's approval. But first, let me tell you what happens in your brain when someone demands an explanation. Your amygdala, the ancient part of your brain responsible for survival responses, interprets this demand as a threat to your social standing. It triggers a cascade of stress hormones that flood your system with the urgent need to defend yourself. This response served our ancestors well when survival depended on maintaining good standing with the tribe. Being cast out meant death, so our brains evolved to desperately avoid social disapproval. But in the modern world, this same mechanism keeps us trapped in cycles of over-explanation and people-pleasing that destroy our personal power. Here's the brutal truth that society doesn't want you to know. Most of the time, when people ask you to explain yourself, they're not actually seeking understanding. They're seeking control. They want to see if they can make you dance. They want to test whether you believe you need their permission to live your life. Think about it. When was the last time someone demanded an explanation from you and then said, "Oh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for clarifying. I completely understand now." It almost never happens. Instead, they pick apart your explanation, find holes in your logic, or simply dismiss your reasons as inadequate. This is because the act of demanding an explanation isn't about the explanation itself. It's about establishing dominance. It's about making you perform for their approval. It's about seeing if they can make you question your own judgment. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this dynamic perfectly. He observed that rulers who constantly justified their actions to their subjects eventually lost the respect of those same subjects. When you explain yourself, you're implying that your actions need validation from others. But leaders don't seek validation. They provide direction. The most dangerous part about over-explaining is that it becomes a habit. Once you start justifying yourself to one person, you start justifying yourself to everyone. You develop what psychologists call external locus of control. Your sense of rightness comes from outside approval rather than internal confidence. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you explain, the less confident you appear. The less confident you appear, the more people question your decisions. The more people question your decisions, the more you feel compelled to explain. Eventually, you become someone who can't make a move without a committee's approval. But here's what changes everything. When you stop explaining yourself, You force others to accept your actions at face value. You demonstrate that your decisions are final, regardless of whether others understand them. You show that you're not seeking permission to exist. This shift is immediately noticeable. People start treating you differently. They stop seeing you as someone who needs to justify their choices and start seeing you as someone who makes choices and stands by them. This is the difference between being a leader and being led. Let me break down the 5 types of explanations you should never give. First, never explain your standards. If you have high standards for yourself, for your work, for your relationships, you don't need to justify them to people who don't share them. When someone criticizes your standards as too high, too strict, or unrealistic, don't defend them. Simply say, "This is what works for me," and leave it at that. Your standards are not up for debate. They're not community decisions. They're personal choices based on your values and your vision for your life. When you explain why your standards are reasonable, you're implying that they need to be reasonable to others. They don't single quotes T.2nd. Never explain your boundaries. Boundaries are not suggestions. They're not starting points for negotiation. They're non-negotiable limits that protect your well-being. When you explain why you have a particular boundary, you invite people to argue with your reasoning. For example, if you don't answer work emails after 6 p.m., you don't need to explain that it's because you value work-life balance, or because you want to spend time with your family, or because you're trying to avoid burnout. You simply don't answer emails after 6 p.m. Your boundaries speaks for itself. Third, never explain your successes. When you achieve something significant, there will always be people who want to diminish it by demanding explanations. How did you get that promotion? Why were you chosen for that opportunity? What makes you so special? These questions are designed to make you feel guilty about your success, or to find ways to discount it. Don't take the bait. Your success doesn't need justification. You earned it. You deserve it. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for why good things happen to you. Fourth, never explain your decisions to people who aren't affected by them. If your choices don't impact someone's life, they have no standing to demand explanations. You don't need to justify your career moves to distant relatives, your relationship choices to casual acquaintances, or your lifestyle decisions to neighbors. The impulse to overshare and over-explain often comes from a misguided desire to be understood by everyone. But seeking universal understanding is both impossible and unnecessary. You don't need everyone to get you. You just need to be true to yourself. Fifth, never explain yourself when you've done nothing wrong. This is perhaps the most important one. When someone implies you've made a mistake, acted inappropriately, or failed to meet some standard, your instinct might be to prove your innocence through explanation. But here's the thing. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to explain. Your clear conscience is explanation enough. When you start defending actions you know were correct, you're accepting the premise that those actions were questionable. Now, let's talk about when explanations are appropriate. Explanations are valuable when they're requested by people who have earned the right to understand your thinking. Your spouse deserves explanations about decisions that affect your marriage. Your children deserve explanations about rules and consequences. Your boss deserves explanations about work-related choices. The key difference is relationship and impact. People who have invested in you, people who are affected by your decisions, people who have demonstrated genuine care for your well-being. These people have earned the right to understand your reasoning. But even in these relationships, your explanations should be choices, not compulsions. You explain because you want to share your thinking, not because you need to justify your existence. There's also a difference between explaining and informing. Informing is giving someone relevant information they need to know. Explaining is defending your actions to someone who's questioning their validity. One is generous communication, the other is submissive justification. So how did you break the habit of over-explanation? Start with the phrase, "I don't need to explain that." Practice saying it in the mirror. Get comfortable with how it feels in your mouth. Most people have never said these words out loud, which is why they feel so foreign at first. When someone demands an explanation you don't owe, try responses like, "I'm comfortable with my decision. That's not something I discuss." Or simply no. These responses are complete sentences. They don't require elaboration. The silence that follows these responses will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll want to fill it with justification. Don't let the other person sit with your refusal to explain. Most of the time, they'll either accept it or reveal that their demand for explanation was really an attempt to control you. Here's a powerful reframe. Every time you don't explain yourself when someone expects you to, you're training them to respect your autonomy. You're teaching them that you're not someone who can be easily manipulated through guilt, shame, or social pressure. This doesn't mean becoming defensive or hostile. You can refuse to explain yourself while remaining calm and respectful. The goal isn't to be rude, it's to be sovereign. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is that other people's understanding is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to make good decisions, treat people with respect, and live according to your values. Whether others understand or approve of your choices is entirely outside your control. This principle becomes especially important when dealing with family members who feel entitled to explanations about your adult life. Just because someone is related to you doesn't give them governing authority over your choices. You can love your family while refusing to justify your life to them. The same applies to friends who question your decisions, colleagues who challenge your methods, or anyone else who acts as if you need their approval to live your life. Your choices are yours to make, and your reasons are yours to keep. There's something else that happens when you stop explaining yourself. You start making better decisions. When you know you won't be defending your choices to a panel of judges, you stop making choices designed to look good to others and start making choices that actually are good for you. You stop asking yourself, "What will people think?" and start asking, "What do I think?" You stop living your life as if it's a performance and start living it as if it's yours. This shift toward internal validation is terrifying for people who've spent their lives seeking approval. It means taking full responsibility for your choices without the safety net of external validation. But it also means unprecedented freedom when you don't need anyone's permission to be yourself. You discover who you actually are underneath all the people-pleasing and approval-seeking. You find your authentic voice, your genuine preferences, your real values. People will test your new boundaries. They'll push harder for explanations when you first start refusing to give them. This is normal. They're used to getting compliance from you, and they'll escalate their efforts when their old strategies stop working. Stay consistent. Don't explain why you're not explaining. Don't justify your refusal to justify. Simply maintain your new standard and let your actions speak for themselves. Over time, people will adjust to your new way of being. They'll stop asking for explanations they know they won't receive. They'll start respecting your decisions even if they don't understand them. Most importantly, they'll start seeing you as someone who knows their own mind. The ultimate goal isn't to become cold or unapproachable. It's to become someone who operates from a place of inner authority rather than external validation. Someone who makes thoughtful decisions and stands by them. Someone who values their own judgment above the opinions of people who haven't earned the right to judge. Remember, explanation is not the same as communication. You can be a great communicator without being someone who constantly justifies themselves. You can share information, express your thoughts, and connect with others without needing their approval for every choice you make. In a world full of people seeking validation for their every move, the person who needs no explanation becomes instantly magnetic. They radiate the kind of confidence that can only come from self-acceptance. They demonstrate what it looks like to be truly free. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't deserve explanations. Your life will immediately become simpler, more peaceful, and infinitely more powerful. The world needs more people who know their own mind and aren't afraid to live according to it. That person could be you, starting today.